Um, okay, I have no concept if I'm on here or not. So I'm assuming,
You're good.
okay, yes. Maybe but to everyone's benefit if I go off camera. So doing that. It's weird. Usually you can see yourself when you're talking, and I can't see myself today. Not that that's a bad thing. Oh no,
I
you
just
have to hit the button that says self view. Interesting. Uh, and my technology prowess, pays off again, to say the least. Um, uh, okay. I'm trying to decide what doesn't make me look like total crap on camera. So, so how are you guys doing today?
Good.
Surviving the 85-degree weather outside?
Staying inside if I possibly can.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny yesterday on our ALC chat. In our market, we're doing it in here because no one else is in there. So just come join me. Okay. So Michelle's not happy that I'm not in the computer room doing this. So whatsoever. So here, you can bring it up here.
I'll
Jump in the screen.
I'll just jump on the computer.
Okay, so no one else came in there. So sorry, this is what happens when you have a work wife. So um yeah, yesterday in the ALC chat, everyone was talking about how cold it was and schools were closed and everything else. And it was interesting because I started giving them crap about it because just because it's cold outside. I remember one time that I was on a national call and we were whining about it, I think being 35 degrees in Atlanta and in Charlotte. And this lady out of Rochester, New York popped up and said, this is like 1 in the afternoon. She said, I have been out in 4 feet of snow showing 6 houses. I don't want to hear, and it was like an older lady. I don't want to hear anything out of you younger guys about having to be in 35 degrees. Ever since then, I've determined I can get my butt out there and go look at stuff. So it isn't going to faze me a great deal.
Mm-mm.
So there's always going to be somebody who can outdo you on that kind of stuff. So so today what I'd like to talk about or and have conversation on actually is the topic is on selling, which is sort of a generic topic because we always talk about listing and buyers and transactions, but getting listings, getting buyers and such. But there's a whole other two-sided phase to it when you're a listing agent and you're having to talk to other agents or people of that sort to talk up about your property, how you do marketing, things of that nature. And then on the buyer side is a little bit more not about how you procure a buyer, but how you talk to the buyer, your buyer client, when you're looking at houses. Because whether we like to admit to it or not, when we're showing property, unless it's a really dog of a property, in all honesty, um, you you're selling the property. A great example of that I can give is that Diane Kelly was kind enough to give us a referral on an office building over in Roswell, right on the Cobb County, Fulton County line. And I actually showed it 2 days ago. And while I went through the property with the potential buyer, I was talking about the attributes of that property and about how you can split it into 4 suites. You could have it one tenant. We started talking about logistics of the current tenant when it's moving out. The buyer actually needs the building faster. What can we do on that? What's the square footage? What's the breakdown square footage? What, things of that nature. So there's a talent that can be done with that. Perfect example of a bad example of it on the listing side is have you guys, and a raise of hands, how many times have you called an agent saying, hey, I'm David McEachern, I'm with Keller Williams, Chattahoochee North, wanted to find out if 123 Elm Street is still available, what your pricing is on it, availability, and you literally get back, yeah, it's available, it's priced at 450. If you want to see it sometime, just give me a call. That's the listing agent's response to it. how would you react when somebody is talking to you in that sense? You know, it would turn you off because y'all and I both know that if you go under contract, you're going to have a lot of interactions with that other agent. You know, that's a perfect example of it. So just start off with what what is y'all's definition of selling? Let me hear that because maybe I just told a whole wrong thing. There's no telling. This is where we have participation. So
I don't
versus
think it
Cam's
makes a
hand
difference.
movements.
I
So,
don't think it makes a difference whether you're on the buying or the selling side. We are in the selling business. So, you know, if somebody reaches out to you for one of your listings, sometimes I have sent that response that you just said. And it might be that I'm in the middle of driving or I'm in the middle of something.
well, I'm meaning it more in a phone conversation. You know,
On a phone
you know,
conversation is different.
yeah, but people talk that way in phone conversations. I mean, literally, especially on our commercial side, you would think that you're talking to somebody who's 35 seconds away from a death scene. You know, with how they react to stuff. There's absolutely no enthusiasm about it. There's no I don't want to say style, that's not the right word to use, but there's no, I mean, enthusiasm is the best way I could describe it. You know, there's no professionalism to it.
Yeah.
You know, what are the things that so let's talk about that. When you get a call, when you get an incoming call on a listing, how do y'all talk to the client? Because that's selling. The minute you're opening your mouth, you're selling that property.
Well, I think it's how you even begin the initial conversation when you answer the phone. You just don't go, "Hey, it's Catherine Brown. How can I help you?" But you can try to engage from the very beginning with them, you know. "Hey, yeah, how's your day going?" Or "Thank you for calling me." And you're trying to hopefully get the conversation going with them so you can get more information from them also about what their buyer's looking for.
Right.
I mean, it's not
So
just cut and dry.
no,
David,
it's not. Yes, ma'am.
Diane Kelly here. Thanks for the shout out on good work on that that new that new project. There is no question that there are really lazy agents out there, and there's no question that particularly well, you don't want to pick a side because it doesn't matter if it's selling or listing, but because it's been a seller's market for so long, a lot of listing agents have, just like they get frustrated when selling agents don't call and give feedback or don't, you know, take care of the property or leave it in the condition it's supposed to be and turn lights off and all the other things. On both sides there's responsibilities, but the listing side, your job is to help sell that property. And I know they get sometimes agents just want to call up and have you do all their work, you know. And
Right.
I kind of say, hey, do you have the HOA docs? Do you have this seller's disclosure? Do you have, you know, a survey? Do you have these things? Because obviously I want to get as much as I can from them and I want to help them sell their property. But there is no question that there's, but I also hold it as, for years and years now, I just hold it that I have to do both sides of the transaction.
Exactly.
I just like, shut up. You got to call and make sure that, you know, you have a listing and somebody wants to buy it. You got to call that agent. You got to make sure they're pre-approved. I just don't complain about it. I just do it. And so I got a call this morning from Amanda Charlesworth wanting a transaction I had at the end of last year, wanting to know if I recommended them to be a Keller Williams agent. And I said, you know, he's really smart. He's been in the business a long time, but I think we would have to do an intervention on him first because I'm sure he's a raving alcoholic, because right in the middle of due diligence, he fell asleep drunk and the clock was ticking and I had to call him 2 times and he woke up in a drunk stupor, said he'd get me what we needed and get it signed and then fell back asleep.
Well, you know how to pick them, don't you?
I know. So the thing, yeah. So some of it is, you know, yes, if we could get every listing agent to be for all of us to do the best job to make sure that we have that we have all the information and we are ready to supply it to whoever is a prospect would be ideal, but it just doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, and that was an interesting point. I have probably 3 or 4 times I've had the recruiting person at Chat North ask me, is like, hey, what do you think about this person, whatever? And I've said no. I've actually said is that they're just not the right fit. So don't ever be afraid if you have a bad transaction with somebody and you don't feel that they're of a certain quality level, while you want to get the downline and everything in place, sometimes it's better off not to do that, quite honestly. Um, on that part. So going,
I have something to add to that.
yes, ma'am.
So, Diane, you're right. Particularly on the listing side, it's our job to gather as much information up front to be able to provide it. But on the buying side, I think it's as important before you even call a listing agent to go through what has been provided. Because that, at least for me, it's one of my pet peeves where I busted my butt, gathering all the information. I've uploaded it to FMLS, Georgia MLS. I've uploaded it to Showing Time. So when you schedule an appointment, all the information comes to you before you go to the appointment. And then, they call like, hey, I'm at the gate. How do I access? Like, come on now.
See, Michelle, let me grab back in there for a second. That's something you told me that I bet a lot of people don't realize. Go back through that whole thing when they make an appointment. It sends it to them.
So on Showing Time, when you set up Showing Time on your listings, you can add documents there. So when somebody schedules an appointment, they get and it's confirmed, they get an email that says additional information for 123 Main Street. And then it has all the documents you attach that you have uploaded there. It gives them all the instructions, if there's a code or whatever, like they get an email with everything, including disclosures, surveys, whatever it is that you uploaded. So like we have, we sell a lot of units in a building, and I add that, and I created a document that has all the instructions on how to park, where to park. I even added a map, like where to access, where the lock boxes are. It's very confusing when you go particularly to a building, right? It's not like you're going to a house and you go to the main door. So, and I can say probably 80% of the people that make appointments to go call me from the gate. Oh, I don't have the gate code. How do I access? And it's very frustrating on the listing side that you have done all that work. And
Yeah,
then,
but what I will say, because we sell a great deal in high rises, Michelle, it is very unusual and it would not be my first thought to go into documents to look at that stuff, quite honestly.
But
now,
you read the private remarks, and I've listed there. Look at the
now in the private remarks, totally different subject.
Right.
I was literally about to say that.
I do list it there, like,
that's what we
please
do
look at
also.
documents for instructions on how to show. And
Yeah.
So it's important on both sides. Look on the listing side, gather documentation. On the buying side, look at the sheets, look at the remarks before you even make the phone call. Because to me, when I get a call, like that agent is off my list. Like I'm like, oh gosh, I hope they don't submit an offer because it's gonna be a nightmare.
But we always, and following up on that, Michelle, when we get a call on one of our listings, we always say to them, these documents are in FMLS and in Georgia MLS. Everything's there for you if you haven't had the time to look. So hopefully they'll go and they'll do that, because we need to that too. Yeah. And we do offer preferences just like you do with all that information and showing instructions, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Correct.
Yep.
In defense of Michelle, David, that email comes immediately after they get the email saying that the showing has been approved. So it's
Mhm.
not like, they have to go in and go into documents or anything. They get a separate email
Yeah.
with those. And
That's fair.
I have the same frustrations, Michelle, because it has like the alarm code for all of mine. And I constantly get calls from my sellers saying, hey, I just got a notification, the alarm went off. And I've even had agents who go in and try to unplug the alarm as opposed to finding out what the alarm code is.
Mhm.
And so it can be frustrating because it's a totally separate email that comes. And
And
that
I'll
just
be
shows that
honest
they're
with
not
you,
checking it.
with all the showings and stuff that I do, I've never received an email like that from an agent.
Really? I get that a lot.
Never,
Yeah, yeah.
never.
And
I
even
get them
when
all
you,
the time.
yeah, and even when you first request, you get that
Okay,
showing
they
time.
don't like me, so they don't send it. So
No, maybe the agent,
Maybe
so the
miss-
agents that you have been requesting showings from are not diligent to do that. If you're not getting it, it's not on you, it's on them.
well, I mean, it's
Yeah.
on me too, because we don't do that because I don't know how to do it. You
Well,
know,
I can teach you.
we all know how
You don't need
technologically
to know
stupid
how.
I am.
You don't
So
need to know how. We just
But
got
we're
to be-
lucky that I'm
there.
even on a Zoom call at this point. Okay.
To be
So-
honest, they should be putting it everywhere, right? You put it in the
Yes.
documents in FMLS, you put it in the private remarks, you send it in showing time as a listing agent. And so then there's they really have no excuse to not
But do
have
it in Georgia MLS too, because you get some of these agents
Yes.
don't use
Yeah.
FMLS and they act like, oh, I don't use it. Just put it have your
Everywhere.
transaction. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Yep.
well, I mean, everyone here puts their listings inside of FMLS and Georgia MLS, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're at
Mhm.
KW, we're required to do that. I just want to
But
make
uploading all
sure.
the documents, I mean, because you can put them into
Yeah,
Georgia
they
MLS,
should be
yeah.
uploaded in both. You're
Yeah.
exactly right. There's no question about it. Even though Georgia MLS is a pain in the ass.
I know.
Yes,
I've,
it is.
yeah, I've said it. It's out there. So that.
Get it.
Um, what are some other things? Since I got y'all talking now, what are some other things in terms of selling that for you or that you've experienced yourself coming from another agent stand out to make people better or make agents better?
I mean, just constant communication. Once you're under
Mhm.
contract at least, or even if you're not under contract, even if, um, if I know it's a multiple offer situation, not that I want to harass the listing agent, but I want to make sure that my buyer is going to have the best possible offer in there. And I want to know, where do we stand in this situation? What can we do, again, without harassing, but make sure that, I'm not sending blind offers over to a listing agent, that you have to have that communication.
Right. So because everyone says that we're going back into multiple offer world on there, that's part of selling, quite honestly, in how much you know and how much you don't know. So let me ask these questions. When, let's say, you're the listing agent and you have multiple offers, what are you telling or giving information to the potential buyer agent that will keep them engaged in doing it, because that's part of selling, and I keep going back to that because it's so different than just listing or working with a buyer or transaction management. What do you say to those agents where they don't throw their hands up in the air and go like, screw it, I'm out of here in this conversation?
I think you have to already think through the things that, so if you know that, I'm just thinking about a house I sold up in Brazelton in the what was it? The Estates of Brazelton or whatever it's called. Chateau Lawn, I guess it's called. They had carpet everywhere on the main level. And at that price point and in that neighborhood, I felt like that was not a good thing for us. And so I had sold them the house and it was already under construction. And so one of the things I did was I was prepared for that being a objection. And so I went and I got all the paperwork from when we bought the house. I knew what the floor was that went in there. So if it was Shaw, I forget the name of not Shaw, but another one of, I went and found that flooring. I found the flooring and got the pricing and had that ready to go at my open house. And the couple, it was a Falcon coach that bought that house. And that was one of the first thing his wife did was rip out all that tight carpet and put hardwoods in all the room, like the living room and the great room and stuff like that, where it had carpet. And
Well, you
I
may want
had
to
all the
call them
information for her.
since they fired the Falcons coach. You may want to call them to see if they're ready to list the house for sale. So,
Oh, is that the guy? Is that he came over from Alabama?
yeah, they all do.
Oh.
So,
He was on
but
the University of Alabama's coach, and he was like a linebacker coach or so. Don't ask me. I don't watch football. No, well, I do now because I'm a Swiftie.
well, the
Oh,
point
no.
is
Go
that
Chiefs. Go Chiefs,
basically
right,
the
Cam?
Alabama,
Nobody was
the
going to catch
the
that.
the Alabama, I mean the Atlanta Falcons coaching staff is about to leave, or they're leaving. So you may want to go back and see if you can get that listing. So
Oh, good idea. Thanks for the tip.
yeah, okay, I'm done for today. So I've done my tip. So um, so going back to the multiple offer thing, how do each of y'all communicate with those multiple buyer agents without losing them? And then where you had, let's say, 4 offers, all of a sudden you're down to 1. And an added question to it, we have 2 choices when we're in a multiple offer situation. This is a selling thing also, is that you can either go to highest and best, or you can look at the offers and decide which one you want to try to negotiate out. What is y'all's philosophy? That's, to me, that's even the bigger question. What's y'all's philosophy on that?
I guess it would depend on how close the offers are together. I mean, if one is really standing out, then you like take the one and roll with it, and look for the next one as being a, hey, would they be interested in a backup option?
I think it
Okay.
depends too. I think it depends on the situation. Like, I had a multiple offer situation last year with like 9 offers and a couple people that said they were going to submit one. And it got high enough that I was afraid it wasn't going to appraise. So having the lack of an appraisal contingency or a big appraisal gap was a big selling point. So talking to them about, hey, great offer, but would your client be willing to this, that, whatever, and then like Cam said, being a backup offer too.
We see if we have more than 3, what Karen and I found worked for us was we would take the top 3. We would take all of the offers and then we would say to when the agent's calling for feedback on, where do we stand? We're going to review everything. And we're going to take the top 3, and then we are going to ask for, highest and best, whatever you want to call it. And this is it. We're not going to play anymore, and then go.
That's an interesting way to do it. I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because normally you either go one of the 2 rows. You either pick one to work with, or or you go for everybody highest and best. I have a tendency, if there's only a couple of offers, or even just 3 offers, I have a tendency to say I'd rather go with one to pick to work with, because I did have one time where it was 3 offers. I went to highest and best, and all 3 pulled their offers.
Yeah.
So
That's the risk. Yeah.
that makes me a little bit tenuous on going to highest and best.
Yeah.
So I have a tendency, and also, to be honest with you, I let the client choose. Some people don't want the stress of going through highest and best.
Right. We always do. No, that is always part of the conversation. Yes, exactly. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And I guess we've had all of our clients, when we get in that situation, they want to go that route, but that is a point. You have to talk.
Yeah. I've had more clients go the route of, let's look at the 3. Let's say there's 4 offers.
Mhm.
Let's look at the 4 offers, figure out which one we like the best at this point, and see if we can make that happen.
Mhm.
And we, work with that. I do, though, in those situations, continuing the theme of selling, is I do highly motivate whoever comes in second on a multiple offer to do a backup offer.
Yes, yep.
Because as we've seen, and if I'm on the buyer side, the first question in my mouth is, will they do a backup offer?
Mhm.
You know, will they be open to it? Because I had, not last year, but the year before, I had 4 or 5 of them where we were the backup offer and we came in, you know, we got it at the end of the day because there were so many terminations that were occurring during that time. I think that has slowed down a bit. But everyone just felt such pressure, you know, 2 years ago to get deals in, you know, at that point. So maybe it's a little
Yeah.
bit, hopefully we won't
David,
go into
that's
that
great.
again.
And we were in a meeting one time, and I think that's a great and has to go back to our Keller Williams culture of doing the next right thing and not being lazy and going for it, because we were in some meeting and that topic came up and it was like wham, bam, bam. Everybody was telling their stories about how they went in a backup. And a lot of times it's the Keller Williams agent listing it and Keller Williams agent who's or all the the backups were Keller Williams agents, because we're trained to do it and we train our agents in our office to do that. Just have it
Yeah,
ready. Just have it
yeah.
ready.
I mean,
Start negotiating.
I have no problem in doing that for a client, because of the sheer fact that it happens so much of the time, that that it occurs. So on a flip side of that, when you're working with buyers, once again, the selling concept of it, in Georgia, we're allowed to write multiple offers now. When Diane and Michelle and I started, we could only write one offer at a time with potential risk of losing earnest money. And someone in our office one time did that and they got screwed over. They ended up having to pay a client $5,000 on earnest money. But now in Georgia, we can do it. We can write multiple offers at the same time. Do you all willingly, for lack of a better word, do you willingly offer that capability to a buyer client?
I just had to do that with a client in November because the listing agent kept missing our deadlines on, we had submitted an offer and not the listing agent, the seller, kept missing our deadlines because they kept thinking, oh, there's another showing coming. They kept that. So my buyers actually were like, we can't wait. We need to see some more houses. We want to put
So
an
they
offer.
were basically, the seller was game playing you.
They were totally game playing us. Yeah.
Mm.
They were dragging us out. Like we had a deadline of noon on Saturday. Oh, can we extend till we've got 2 showings Saturday afternoon? Can we extend it to Sunday? I mean, they ended up actually getting really lucky because they came back to us. And my buyers really wanted that house. But yeah, they were really
Interesting. I don't think I've ever had that happen before.
Yeah, they were really messing around with us. They were lucky that
That's a
my
shame.
buyers liked it as much as they did.
Wow. Wow. What about the rest of you guys? Do you offer that to a client? I mean, I have to admit, I've done it when I feel that there is one of two things occurring, a bit of ambivalence about making an offer, or there is true stress between two houses. Every house has its pros and cons, and they start, playing into that game. I will offer that to them. I will offer to somebody on ambivalence just to get them off the mark, to start doing something. Because once you're in it, it's you start getting into competition mode, and it may spark something in them to keep going, with it. A good comparative to that is funny how people can be very ambivalent about things until competition occurs. My partner, he had just got a promotion and he was going through the interview process and he was sort of like, yeah, if I get it, whatever. And then once he got through, literally it was 5 rounds of interviews. When he got to interview round 4, all of a sudden it's like, I better get this, I want this, that type of thinking. And we see the same thing, or I've seen the same thing occur with buyers. How many of us, and please tell me I'm not the only one that has ever been to an auction where you say, I'm not spending more than $150 on something, and then you get up there and you just get competitive, maybe with a couple of cocktails in you, and you end up, going above that number. So, I mean, we've all done that before. And so sometimes that's maybe a little bit manipulative what I was doing, but it pushes them along, in the process, to do that. Or am I a total scuzzbag? I mean, y'all could tell me that too. If I'm being that, on there. So, how do y'all feel about writing multiple offers? Are you okay with doing that? Or do you feel it creates too much confusion?
If you have to, you have to. It makes me antsy. I always, can something, miss something and something can go wrong. It doesn't happen that way, but I'd rather not do it.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
But I mean, again, what does your client want to do? And
Right. Well, I'd say probably 97% or 98% of clients don't know they even have that right, or not right, but option, to do, as far as that goes. Michelle, what do you think? You're looking very serious.
Um,
Or are you looking at Pinterest?
no. Multiple offers are so tricky, right? And you do want to keep people engaged, but at the same time, I don't like giving false expectations either. So when I do have a listing that goes into a multiple offer situation, I usually put it on the remarks that all offers will be accepted until such and such date and such time. And once I pick that with the seller, we do not change that. Like, there is no like, oh, we got a great offer and this is it, we're gonna go with this one and now we're gonna change that time. It doesn't matter. We're gonna go through the end of what was advertised, because some people might have that time frame in their head and they're still showing other properties before making a decision on whether they're going to submit an offer on this particular listing or not. Once all the offers are received, and for me, my biggest fear on multiple offers as a listing agent is not presenting one, like missing an offer and not presenting it. So what I do is I create an Excel sheet, a Google sheet, where every time an offer comes in, I log it in there. And
I do the same thing.
Like
Same
the
thing.
price, the closing costs, kind of like the big ticket items that we look for in an offer. And that will help me later down the road. So then over on the right on that same sheet, I have a couple columns that will help me keep organized and keep track. So I add a presented offer, like acknowledged. If I acknowledged to the other agent that I got the offer. B, presented, that I made sure I showed it to the seller. And then the next one is like if I reached out after. So also what I do, because the sellers are going to go not by what we tell them, but they're looking for our guidance, right? So that Excel sheet is really what I go over with them. And then I create a folder where I upload all the offers by agent name, and I share that folder with the seller. So if they choose to like actually open the actual offer, then they can do it. They have the offer right there. But for the most part, they usually just want to see that Excel sheet, and we go through the Excel sheet.
Yeah, and that's what I had one time. This is back in the craziness of the market. I had 32 offers on a property, and it's just so much. In fact, my clients was like, I don't want to see all those papers. Just break out the points, to me. And they much prefer that. I don't have. I mean, that was just such a weird time. getting 32 offers on a property, you know,
Yeah.
and stuff. So
and
let me
then-
ask oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So then after that, like once the seller decides, okay, this is the one that we're gonna just go with, right? We're gonna start negotiating and this one's gonna be our backup. We always pick a backup. Then I actually send an email to everyone that submitted an offer,
Yeah.
you know, and it's a templated email. Like I already have it ready. I just modify like a couple things here and there. But it's a good, well-crafted email saying, hey, thank you so much for showing. Thank you for your time. I can see that you put a great offer together. Unfortunately, you know, my seller decided to work with a different person at this time. If something changes, I will definitely reach out back to you and let you know. And you have no idea how many emails I get in response to that saying, thank you for taking the time to letting me know,
Exactly.
you know, what's going on. And I've had situations where the first offer falls through and then I reach out to the next person. And because I've been keeping them in the loop and I've been nice, they're like, oh yeah, let's go for it, you know? So just take the extra 5 or 10 minutes to acknowledge people worked on it. They put a lot of time and effort to send an offer on your listing, and they might have done the best they could with that particular client. But just be nice, like be nice.
Honestly, the two biggest words to come out of that, and this goes back to our main theme here, is that while it is a totally intangible item or quality, being communicative, which both Catherine and Sandy, like, you know, made that point at the beginning, and being professional in being grateful to even have offers, you know, coming in, makes such a huge difference with it. I remember there was an agent that used to, her name was Jenny Mosher, and I remember there was a property that we made an offer on that she had the listing on, and I just really liked how she handled it. I mean, you know, she was very clear when she would be, you know, when the time was ending, like what Michelle talked about. It didn't go past that. She then said, okay, we're closed on time. We've got, you know, it was very clear to us, we have 4 offers on the property. I'm going to be talking to the client at this and this time, and we'll come back out to everybody, you know, within 3 hours of having that discussion. And she did everything that she said she was going to do. It maybe wasn't overly personalized, but the thing is, you knew where you stood in the process and you could communicate that back. And she was very straightforward about it. And I think I mean, that was 4 years ago, and that still sticks in my head as an example. So obviously that makes an impression. You know, the same way the stories of the realtors from hell stuck in my head from 17 years ago, you know, the good ones stick in your head. And that's where you want, you know, to do it. I mean, I've been very fortunate, I think, in building. In our group, we have that commercial side of the business, and or for a lot of people in town that don't want to work in town, or south side, the residential side, to where hopefully we've increased our reputation by doing what we say we're going to do and by communicating and things of that nature to have, you know, have that business there. There is value, and while you may not think of it as selling, you're selling yourself every day. When you get in, and I'm not going to go down my typical rabbit trail of talking about clothing and stuff like that, but how you present yourself as a person and to other agents and to other people, even in the smallest of things, standing in line at Target, you know, you make an impression, you know, on people. There have been times where Michelle's been with me where we've been at a KW thing, and, you know, I'll introduce myself or she'll introduce herself, and the other person, and we have no idea who this person is. And they'll say, yeah, I know who you are. Like, you know, you should know that that you're known, or that your name is out there, or something of that sort. And I can guarantee you it came off of a conversation where I was selling either a listing or working as a buyer's agent, on something, to get that. So I'm not going to go get on my soapbox about it, but do remember that you're honestly, every time you walk out of the house or every time you walk out of your office, you're in sales mode, whether you realize it, or not. And I think that the people that we've seen, be wildly successful, such as Michelle on this call, or Diane, or in some of the other ones of you, that the reason why they are is because of their capability of being proactive for their listing clients, in terms of talking to other people and continuously selling the property, and then also on their buyer clients in how they interact with those listing agents. Because we've all had buyer agents that come to us going like, crap, I don't want to deal with them. That's someone who's not selling, quite honestly. And you don't want to be known as that person. I don't think any of us on this call, would want to be known as that person. So, okay, that was my 5-second speech for today. For some of you, if some of you who are newer to the industry and such as that, what are some questions that you have about selling yourself, or how you talk to other agents, or how you interact with buyer clients such as that? Do y'all have any questions concerning that? Or any questions at all? It's open forum.
David, Fanita here. Just going back on the, when you're representing, you are not afraid, or we can submit multiple offers on behalf of our buyer. How many would you max out at, would you say? Because otherwise, for instance, you don't want to be writing offers for every single property.
No.
And then also the deposit or the earnest money, can you make it, and please forgive me because I haven't seen, a backup offer. I haven't done one here. So can you make the earnest money due 3 days after acceptance?
Yeah, so to answer the first part of your question, the most I've ever done is 3 offers. I really only want to write one or 2 offers at one time, because it is our time. I think what Cam and I have had this conversation before, is you've got to look at what your time is worth. Think about yourself as an accountant or a lawyer or someone who does billing. Think about what are you doing and how much are you making time for? I'll be honest with you, I got a client this afternoon. If they don't make their freaking mind up on a warehouse this afternoon, I'm probably going to let them go, because it's not that big a deal for as many times as they have pivoted on what they say they're going to need. There comes a limit. Now, are there going to be some deals where you just all of a sudden write a contract and you're done in 15 minutes? Yes. And there's going to be some that go longer out. But I would say if you have a buyer who says, I really like both these houses, I don't know which one, and you say to him, well, let's write an offer and see where we can get the best deal. If you're truly okay with either one, I would only do 2, as far as that goes. In terms of the earnest money in Georgia, 2 things. Number one, in your contract on the front page, it'll say that earnest money is to be deposited within X number of days. In Georgia, you can do, on that particular form, you can do up to 5 days. When you go out past that, you're going to ring some really big warning signs to the listing client that is going to make you less desirable in an offer. I've rarely ever had anyone say to me 5 days or not, or try to pull it in. To do that. So you're allowed that 5-day period. And there you can write a special stipulation saying whenever you want to do it. You don't have to have the earnest money in 15 minutes. necessarily. Sometimes it's just logistically not possible. And if you use the Earnest app, it actually does take, even if you do it on day one for the processing to go through, it takes 2 to 3 days for that processing on ACH to actually occur.
Okay, well, thank you.
Famita, I would also say if you're putting in multiple offers for your buyer, it's really only works if you have due diligence, obviously, because
Of course,
Mhm.
always.
right. Just wanted to
Yeah,
mention
yeah,
that
you
for
have to have
anybody-
that.
for
Yeah.
anybody that didn't know that, but you really have to
Right.
have due diligence. Yeah.
Right.
That's true. That's true. I didn't even think about it from that. I didn't think about the earnest. I was thinking about when getting earnest money in versus that.
No,
If you're doing multiple,
right.
if you're doing
No, it
multiple
was-
offers, you have to have a due diligence period to be able to kill.
of course, always. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Has anybody run into anything with the Sizer Burnett lawsuit? Have you run into any issues with sellers not wanting to pay a commission to the buyer?
No, not
Yeah.
yet. Neither on the commercial or the residential side. My conversation has changed though. I
Uh-huh.
will say that. I make it very clear that that our listing, I don't call it a commission. I call it our service fee for listing a property is 3%. The standard has always been 3% on the other side for a total of 6, but it's your choice what you want to do with that. And the most conversation I've had come back off of that is what's a rational number to bring buyers in through an agent. And I say the standard's 3%. They're going to look at it. I mean, let's be realistic on what it is, but you're not obligated to do that. You're not required to do that. And I found this fascinating to watch on the residential side, because on commercial side, and Michelle and Diane, you were there at ALC retreat when Melba was talking about if you don't ask what the commission is, you could be paid nothing on there. That's how commercial world works. If you do not ask the other broker in a commercial deal what your commission would be, because on CoStar and Crexi and those systems, there is not a commission line.
Hmm.
So if you don't ask, they don't legally owe you anything. And the only reason Melba learned it was because she had somebody a long time ago who didn't ask, and they didn't get paid. They did the whole deal and they were under no obligation. They didn't have a buyer brokerage agreement that covered the 3% or anything of that sort. So I've made it very clear from this point on that when I'm talking to people that we charge 3% on either the listing side or the buyer side. I have not had anyone kick on me yet on the buyer brokerage agreement. Not say it won't occur, but I haven't had it happen yet. As far as that goes.
Yeah. Okay. It's curious.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to happen. Let's just get real. And that's a good question to ask. What are you going to do? Because you need to be prepared for this, like any script. If somebody says to you, I'm not going to pay a buyer's commission on this deal. I'll pay you 3% to list it, but I'm not going to pay anyone to come to it. Are you still going to take the listing?
Yes, but you will educate them on how they're shooting themselves in the foot by not having.
I understand that. What I'm saying is you get the ornery, good old Southern guy who's going to like, hell, if I know now that I don't have to pay 3% to a buyer's agent, I'm not paying it. It's their problem. The buyer can, I don't know why my hand went up. That's really weird. If I don't have to pay it, I mean, I met one of these guys yesterday, quite honestly, on a listing appointment. If I don't have to pay it, I'm not paying it, damn it. And they flat put their foot down. What do you do?
I think it's like the overpricing a listing conversation that you have with them. You still take the listing, but you have the hard conversation that this is probably going to limit the pool of buyers that are going to come see your house. And if that's the case, we need to have a strategy in place as to how we're going to handle that. And
Okay,
if we
so
need
the
to make a
answer to
change.
that, once again, y'all are missing the point of what I'm asking.
Mm.
You have that conversation and he says, I don't care. I'm not paying 3%.
Karen and I had this conversation just 2 days ago. We sat down and we were talking about what are we going to do in that situation? And we haven't come up with a firm, but we're leaning towards if we feel like we can work with the seller and the seller's just adamant about it, we just put it out there, and it's 0% commission. And then the buyer's agent has to have that conversation with their buyer before they sign that buyer brokerage. If it shows zero compensation, you got to get it from somewhere else. But then we went, well, we'll have to see what happens when it actually happens to us. But our feeling was take the listing if we feel we can work with the seller in all the other areas, but we haven't run into it.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
So
Fair enough. Fair
I've
enough.
Any
I'm
other
not
comment
trying to
on
create
it?
an
Yeah.
argument. I want to
Yeah.
learn myself.
Yeah. What is that? Somebody else? What would you? Yeah.
I
I've
was gonna
had,
say, for
sorry,
one
Tony.
thing, sorry, Michelle, go ahead. You
No,
outrank
you
me.
go.
No, for one thing, David, if it is that good old ornery Southern boy, he's not dealing with me. But second, if one of the things that we've discussed in our PC class, if the situation comes, is, yeah, you take the listing after, the normal 10 days, no showings, or 10 days, no
Mhm.
first things of that nature. You go back to your client and you're like, hey, we are not seeing the traction that we're expected to get for this house. Maybe if now we offer a co-broker success fee for it, you might see get the results that you're looking for. So
Did they say to
could be
write that in as a special stip, Tony? Like, how we have a tendency, we write that special stip and it, like you just said, if we don't have X amount, we're going to review the price in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And then this is what our price adjustment is going to be. Did they say do that with?
We didn't discuss writing it in as a special step. We've discussed, the auto price reduction, writing that in as a special step. But the way we discussed it was, before we discuss price reduction, let's discuss, going into co-broker. So that'll probably be something we'll discuss, next PC class, but putting it as a step, but we haven't discussed it as actually
Hold their feet to the fire.
I
Yeah.
think also, and I apologize, my lawn is being done here. I think also reminding your seller that if there are other houses on the market and your house is essentially 3% more expensive now, if you're not offering a buyer brokerage fee, are you willing to lower the price of your home 3% to make up for that difference?
Yeah, and Leslie and Andy are always saying 5%. So, yeah. I mean, oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm trying not to have you hear the leaf blower back here.
I can't hear it.
If you're not offering a 3% to the cooperating brokerage, you're essentially making your house 3% more expensive to any buyer that comes there, right? Because they're going to have to
They're going to have to come up with it somehow.
They're going to have to come up with it. So you, Mr. Seller, are you willing to price your home 3% lower than the other homes you're competing with? Because that's, and that still may not work, because it's still cash out of the pocket of the buyer that they have to come up with, not something that they're rolling into their loan typically. But, that's another, I just had a listing appointment. We talked about it. Luckily the sellers got it, but they saw it as a marketing strategy. They saw it as a marketing strategy for selling their home, just like anything else, because they want to sell their home quickly and they want to get top dollar. And but they're essentially.
I think it's so interesting. Is this just me? But I think it's so interesting that all this came up, right? I thought it was kind of at the tail end, but I don't think it's not at the tail end of it being a 10-year seller's market. And so it's basically because there was a group of disgruntled sellers that felt like they were being forced to pay this extra fee to the selling agents, right? And the selling broker.
And it happened.
To me, it's like, the stats are so astronomical. The prices in my area have gone up 49% over the last 3 years. So the sellers for 10 years have been dancing on the tabletops, where the buyers have been paying, you know, huge inflated prices, over list price. At first it was like, you know, really good interest rates, but you know, you'd have to go way over list price to win the bid. You get no seller paid closing costs. You know, all the things that used to be standard when I first got in this business, you know, went away, and the sellers just had to eat it. You know, I mean, the buyers just had to eat it, eat it, eat it. So to me, it's a little bit of, and they were never forced to pay that. There was never, it's right there in the contract, black and white. It says I can't remember, David, I don't ever remember a point where it didn't show where 3% of it went.
That's in
Yeah.
Georgia. Yeah, not all states have a type
Yeah,
of
I get it,
brokerage.
but
That's
Yeah.
what I was about to say.
Yeah.
The reason why this lawsuit occurred, and it occurred in Missouri, from what I talked to an agent in St. Louis, is that if you looked, you have to remember every state's forms are different. In New York State, a listing agreement is actually a letter. In New York State, realtors don't write the contracts, lawyers do. It goes to them. In Missouri, from what I've been told, is that it was represented a lot of the time as this is what you do. You know, it wasn't like in Georgia, on Georgia's forms for a number of years now, where you see the listing thing, it says 6%. Let's say you put in 6%, and you immediately say where you're going to pay the broker, you know, the buyer broker on, or the selling agent on the transaction. We have in Georgia, fortunately, have been very open and transparent in our conversations, much more than other states. That's why we all seem a little bit, I've always seen with the Georgia realtors
So
a little
I
bit
just
like,
consider it a cost of doing business. And it's, and you know,
yeah,
we can keep saying it's 3%, but it's 6%. 3% goes to our side, 3% goes to the other side, because they're going to bring the buyer. And it's just a cost of doing business.
exactly. I agree with you wholeheartedly. The other thing that is, I guess, throws the Georgia realtors more than others is this theory of this theory of, you know, you have to do this, you know, in such as that. We've always been very, the conversation's just always been very open, where from what I hear in other states they had. The other thing is that at KW, I have never been told by anyone in KW, this is what you have to charge. There are other brokerages where I have literally heard it from clients who have tried to adjust the commission rate, where they have been told X company does not allow us to lower that rate. It has to be this rate or nothing. That's where lawsuits in Missouri come from. And that's part of what I find hilarious, that, you know, in an ironic way, that KW is in this mess with everyone else, because of the sheer fact that, at least me, I have never had a conversation with anyone in the region, in OPs, in TLs, telling me this is what you have to do. I could sell property for $1 a listing if I wanted to, and no one would say anything. I mean, someone would say something eventually, but, you know, it's my choice how I run that part of it. And I think that that's where we all get a little bit lost. Now, on the other side, and in addition, I will say my coach, his wife is the largest KW agent in New Jersey. She runs the largest team there. And he has said to me, talking to his other clients, that they're just freaking out. And he said, honestly, stop. You know, he said, stop it. Go about your work. Don't stick your head in the sand, but just keep doing your work the way it is, and don't ignite the situation, because people, as you said, Diane, people understand that's part of the game to do that. It was just what's occurred is there's been fire put on gasoline in this Missouri case, where there were agents who didn't present in an open manner to do it, and that's what's built it, from that point. So the biggest thing I would say to you guys is, as we finish out, just go to work, show your value, as what we've been hearing. I haven't been hit with that conversation yet.
I think Melba has made a good point that we're probably all going to do it. Like you said, David, business as usual. We already have those conversations with our clients. We're already educated to do that. it's the co-op agents that haven't been educated to do that, or that misunderstand the lawsuit situation and think that they can't charge 3% or give 3% to a buyer broker. There's a lot of bad education out there that we're probably going to run into. And I think that's a
There
big
is,
part of
there
what
is,
Mel was
but you know
talking
what? You know what? As Michelle, Diana, and I can tell you, there was a lot of bad education 18 years ago when we were doing this. There's always going to be bad education. What you always want to do is be the best at what you can do. You know, every day, be educated. I'm not saying, I'm going to be very careful of this, especially with the new guys on here. That does not mean sit in a classroom, 20 hours a week. That's not going to put money in your pocket. But do go to team meeting every so often. Do go to classes. Go to chart masters if that's something that grabs your attention, you know, those parts of it. But the thing that's going to put money in your pocket is to lead generate every day. You know, doing that and be the best professional that you can. Make your business look like a true practice, not that you're just selling a house, but that you're running a practice, you're running a business, and you're the most professional that you can be, and you're going to succeed and be at the top of the charts if you do that, and you're committed to the time to be able to do that. So now that I pulled my soapbox out, at some point you guys knew that was going to happen. That I'll finish up with there. Hopefully this conversation's been helpful and maybe a couple of points have come across to it. We'll be back next month before family reunion. Maybe we can talk a little bit about family reunion for especially for the people who are going some between Diane, Michelle, and I, we probably have 432 years experience of going to family reunions. So see, Michelle not even paying attention to me anymore.
I am.
So
Family reunion. You're talking about family reunion.
yeah, but at least crack a grin, okay? So you know, out of it. We'll talk a little bit about that you know, coming up. I will say, guys, if you're going to family reunion and you haven't booked flights yet, look at that stuff because they are charging out the butt for flights. You know, going out there. Megabus may be a good option, you know, at this point. So with that. All right. Anything else from y'all? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. It's great to have a number of people to have and a very interactive group. I really do appreciate that. So y'all have a great day. If there's anything that I can do to help you, always feel free to reach out.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
All right. Thanks.